Texans may be through the worst of the weather, but now some who didn't lose power face sky-high utility bills. The governor says it isn't right. Utilities can't stick customers with high bills after the storm. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that it will not stop a grand jury from obtaining former Trump's tax returns and other financial records. And New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio reverses his decision to immediately close 2 ice rinks run by the Trump organization. This comes after criticisms from Eric Trump. And former President Trump is said to give his first public appearance since leaving office at CPAC this week. A former senior advisor hints at what topics might be covered. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. A quick clarification about the weather before we kick off. Hawaii does in fact have snow on top of 2 volcanoes, but the majority of the island is still snow-free. Sorry for the confusion. Now, as for Texas, the state saw a lessening in severe weather, but many Texans woke up to a different kind of shock: sky-high utility power bills. Texas Governor Greg Abbott calling for an emergency meeting with lawmakers on Saturday. He announced a temporary ban on electric bills Sunday. He says they'll use the time to find a way to protect utility customers. This comes after reports that many Texans were charged thousands of dollars for electricity during the frigid temperatures. One man told Dallas News he was charged over $5,000 for just 5 days. Senator Cruz writes no power company should get a windfall because of a natural disaster, and Texans shouldn't get hammered by ridiculous rate increases for last week's energy debacle. And San Antonio's mayor agrees, saying it would be unconscionable for bills to go up and for bills to be put on the backs of residents in this state who have been suffering and freezing in their homes for the last week through no fault of their own. He says it was a failure by the state's energy management, and they should be held accountable. What's unusual is that Texas has a deregulated energy market that lets consumers choose between scores of competing electricity providers. Some Texas providers sell energy at prices that rise with demand, which skyrocketed last week. Another challenge is the food and water shortage. Politicians on both sides are chipping in to help. Progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "We just hit $5 million raised for Texans across the state." Julian Castro says they raised $400,000. Beto O'Rourke says they're going door to door again on Monday to help people with food and water. And Ted Cruz delivered water after returning from Cancun. All power plants were back online this weekend, and power's been restored to most homes. But concerns still remained about water supplies, with millions of Texans being advised to boil water before using. Houston officials said the city's water was safe to use without boiling as of Sunday. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has issued civil investigative demands to power companies regarding the outages, their emergency plans, and pricing, saying that the companies grossly mishandled the weather emergency. And Governor Greg Abbott says the Texas National Guard and military members from several states were helping to deliver and distribute bottled water to Texans in need. The White House says President Biden will visit Texas in the near future, possibly as soon as this week. Now moving to New York, Trump's tax returns are back in the spotlight. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the New York grand jury. Trump has requested to put an October 7th lower court ruling on hold. Now the New York grand jury will be able to obtain the records and look at them in secret. But the possibility of leaks to legacy news media can't be ruled out. The court issued a single-sentence ruling on Monday that reads, "The application for a stay presented to Justice Breyer and referred to the court is denied." The justices did not provide an explanation. Trump's accounting firm Meier USA has said it is not contesting the subpoena and will comply with the legal obligations. Manhattan District Attorney's Office hasn't yet publicly said what it is investigating, but some details have emerged in court filings that suggest prosecutors are seeking evidence of possible falsification of records, as well as insurance and tax fraud. They are seeking 10 years of tax returns. It's part of a probe into possible state tax fraud by Trump. The Trump Organization has described the probe as politically motivated and earlier accused the move as continued harassment. Trump's taxes came under the spotlight last year when a New York Times report claimed Trump paid $750 in federal income taxes in both 2016 and 2017, after years of reporting heavy losses from his business enterprises. The tax return data that the New York Times obtained reportedly spans several decades, but doesn't include the president's personal returns from 2018 or 2019. Trump responded at the time saying he paid millions in dollars in taxes, but was entitled to depreciation and tax credits. He also told reporters at the White House at the time that he would be, quote, proud to show his taxes, but that he couldn't as they were under audit by the IRS. As Trump is no longer in office, he also no longer enjoys immunity. A criminal conviction would be unprecedented, as no former president has ever been charged with a crime, and much less convicted for one. And still in New York, the city's mayor has reversed a decision. A popular ice skating rink will stay open for the rest of the year. This after Eric Trump lambasted the mayor's move to close them early. Eric Trump told the New York Post, "De Blasio is now shutting down skating season while New York dies. It's horribly sad," adding, "and this isn't about us. This is about the people of the city who come here to skate." Mayor Bill de Blasio's office reversed the move, saying the popular rinks will stay open for the rest of the season. He says New York City kids deserve all the time on the ice they can get this year. The ice rinks will now stay open through April. Eric Trump responded, tweeting, "You've just made countless New York City families, along with our 250 employees, incredibly happy," adding, "This is a bright moment for New York." Former President Trump had rebuilt the rinks after the city's renovation efforts had failed, bringing it back to life in 1996. De Blasio, however, wants to cut ties between the city and the Trumps. While he was announcing that the ice rinks will remain open, de Blasio also stated, quote, "Make no mistake, we will not be doing business with the Trump organization going forward." According to CBS News, the organization has appealed the city's decision. If de Blasio is successful, the Trump organization will also stop operating a Central Park carousel and a golf course in the Bronx. As to Trump, he's set to give his first public appearance at this year's Conservative Political Action Conference, or CPAC. Trump's former senior advisor hints at what some of the topics might be. According to Trump's one-time advisor, Stephen Meier, Trump will focus in part on standing up to the Chinese regime, reviving U.S. manufacturing, and securing the border. Speaking to Fox host Maria Bartiromo, Meier said Trump will describe a vision where schools are open and the border is closed to illegal immigration. And Meier took time to compare Trump's vision to Biden's new immigration bill. A lot of Trump's points are in direct opposition to Biden's executive orders, his apparently softer stance on China, and his administration's unclear message on when schools will reopen. The Biden administration has also terminated the Keystone Pipeline and halted border wall construction. As to the host of the conference, Chairman Max Schlapp told the Washington Examiner he personally invited Trump. He says he thinks Trump deserves to be heard, adding even people who disagree with him will agree that he deserves to be heard. He said Trump should be uncanceled. Meier also hinted that Trump will talk about the GOP's future. Speaking to Newsmax over the weekend, Meier says Trump intends to share his views on growing Republican support for his America First agenda, as well as how the Republican Party can win in the 2022 and 2024 elections. Now, there's been questions as to whether Trump will run in 2024. Former Housing Secretary Ben Carson told the Washington Examiner that Trump can, quote, "of course, make a comeback in 2024. Carson went on to say it's a good thing Democrats are in control of Congress and the White House because now the public can see what they are trying to do. And polls seem to show that Trump's popularity is rising. One poll found 73% of GOP voters say Republican leadership should be more like Trump. The former GOP House Speaker Newt Gingrich, meanwhile, says Trump is virtually untouchable in the Republican Party, adding that nobody can fight him. Speaking to WABC 77 AM in New York over the weekend, Gingrich says what's very striking is that President Trump still has such enormous reach in the party that nobody can fight him, adding, "You can complain about him, you can criticize him." But he says McConnell doesn't have a big enough base to fight Trump in the political arena. Gingrich seems to be referring to statements made by both Trump and McConnell. Trump issued a blistering statement on McConnell last week, criticizing his leadership. Trump said the Republican Party won't win again if McConnell is in charge. He says McConnell will never do what needs to be done or what is right for our country, adding he will back primary rivals who espouse making America great again and our policy of America first. He added, "We want brilliant, strong, thoughtful, and compassionate leadership." Trump also blamed McConnell for losing the Senate majority last year and said McConnell has no credibility on China because of his family's business holdings there. Trump says his only regret is giving McConnell his endorsement, adding that McConnell, quote, begged for it. Trump called McConnell a, quote, dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack. And while McConnell voted to acquit Trump in the impeachment trial, he criticized him on the Senate floor, saying, quote, "There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day." That's in reference to the January 6th Capitol breach. He also suggested that Trump could face civil or criminal charges. Trump and his lawyers deny that he incited any violence on January 6th. So Trump is set to speak on the last day of CPAC in Orlando, Florida. And while it has been confirmed the former president will speak, the former vice president will not. CPAC's communications director has confirmed that former Vice President Mike Pence was invited but has declined to speak. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.